You're listening to Empty Nexters, a podcast about finding joy, beauty, and wonder in the next season of life. What's your next? Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Empty Nexter podcast. I'm your host, Shelley, and I am so excited to have you with me here on this wonderful day. It's just a wonderful day, right? It's the day the Lord has made, and let us rejoice and be glad in it. And I'm grateful that you're with me to just celebrate all that God's doing in our lives and be grateful that we're on this journey together as empty nexters and next nexters. I'm going to keep bringing that up because the empty nexter life, while it does lend more towards the season of life where the empty nest has come and we have released our children and we're maybe in that, 50 plus season. But, I want to kind of broaden our reach a little bit or expand our reach to where we are making sure the next nexters are feeling included and know that they have a voice and they have some like skin in the game, so to speak, as far as what they're walking through in their next season. Because sometimes we think of a next season as just, we retired. What do we do next? Actually, it's more than just that. It's what happens when things are happening with my kids and I don't know what to do next. And life is changing in my family with my kids getting older. Maybe they're 9 or 10 and now they're going into, middle school, all that. So let's just make sure we as empty nexters are opening our arms wide to every generation because I feel empty nexters are generational. That is the heart and the prayer for me in this season is that we hug and love all the ones around us and give them hope and encouragement to just keep going. Like Dory says, just keep swimming, right? So back to the topic of today. Today, we're going to talk about courageous influence. So as we say, let's dive on in. Here we go. So I was recently at one of our women's conferences, and I must say, I give a shout out to the younger, I don't know where that's at, younger generation who have taken our sisterhood ministry and just brought in such a perspective. Us more mature women have a certain perspective, but they bring in a different perspective. And like I said, generationally, it is such a beautiful relationship between the mature ones and the young ones. But the girls this year wanted to focus on one word. And I thought, man, I'm going to tag onto that word and we're going to talk about it as our empty next season. And the word is influence. I know you've heard it a lot because we live in a world where social media is literally overflowing with air quotes influencers, self-proclaimed influencers, I might add. I might stumble over that word influence. If I do, bear with me. Everywhere we turn, I'm guilty of this. Someone is influencing something, what to wear, what to buy, how to look, how to eat, what success should look like, or even our worth and what it should be tied to. But listen, not every influence is leading people down the right path. I've caught myself just scrolling on Instagram. I'm all about new recipes and healthy living. And I can get so caught up in letting other people influence me by what they're doing. And it may be great for them. And then I do it and it doesn't work good. Then I'm defeated and discouraged. I want to make sure the people that I am let speaking into my life, the influence that they partake to me is holy and godly and good, and not just some random person saying, hey, do this. And I don't even give it a second thought. So as we move through this influence podcast today, I just want you to put on your spiritual ears to hear what is God really saying as far as us as nexters, our influence in the season that we're in. Some influences pull us towards comparison, pressure, approval, and chasing things that leave us empty. And while we say empty nexters, that doesn't mean we live empty lives. That means our lives have been emptied out from a season of raising children and working or even the next nexters. Maybe there's, some emptiness just letting kids grow up and figure out the mothering and the wife thing or the single mom thing. But we do not flow out of a place of emptiness. We can easily get caught up in following all those voices that are so loud instead of the voices that are so life giving. I know I can do that. But as believers, you know, and I know we're called to be something different. So maybe the question isn't how many people am I influencing, like they say on Instagram or Facebook, all the followers. Maybe the question we need to ask ourselves is, what direction am I leading people in? Because we influence people everywhere we go, whether we know it or not. And we need to focus on how can we influence for the kingdom. In this season of my life, I'm realizing, oh, Jesus, help me. Help me influence people for the kingdom. And that takes a lot of courage. And that's what we're talking about these days is courage. Sometimes being an influencer for the kingdom looks like that person who speaks truth when nobody else wants to say it. Being bold. It takes courage to represent Jesus in a world that often celebrates anything and everything except him. Now, listen, you may never know who's watching your life, and we know we are always being watched, whether we know it or not. Someone is always noticing how you handle hard seasons, how you treat people, how you respond under pressure, and how you walk out your faith even when life isn't easy. I've personally seen people in my life that have dealt with great loss, great health challenges, and yet they've influenced me in a way that I'm like, wow, if they can walk through that, oh, my stuff is so minor. Now, I'm not minimizing seasons in my life that are pretty significant, but when you see someone losing a child, yet still coming to church, lifting their hands in praise, when you see a woman going through cancer, still coming to church, lifting her hands, it influences me in such a powerful way. Maybe you experienced that yourself. So let me say something very clear. You do not have to have a platform to influence. I do not need to be up on a stage. You do not need to be up on a stage. Because of what I've realized as a more seasoned, mature mother whose kids are not needing me as much anymore. They need me, but it's different. My biggest influences and seasons were around the kitchen table. Having game night, going on vacation, going out to dinner with my kids, the late nights when my teenagers didn't want to talk all day long, but then at 11 o'clock when I was the tiredest, they'd say, Mom, can we talk? Oh, I remember those nights. I had influence then. I influenced them not only in the encouragement I gave them, but that I was willing to set aside my time, my tiredness to be with them. Oh, I know that spoke volumes to my kids. But your friendships are influence. Your workplace, your family, and your everyday life, you influence someone. So the question isn't whether we all have influence. We know we all do. My biggest question is, what am I doing with it? And maybe that's the question for you as well. So I thought maybe it would be kind of interesting. There's a couple of women that I thought we don't really hear about a lot. We've been talking about a lot of courageous women in the Bible. But as a young Christian growing up, I always heard about this duo in the Bible that I thought, man, that'd be interesting. Let's just do a quick little discussion on them. And their influence was beyond the house. That's my first one. 2 Timothy 1:5. I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice. They weren't apostles. They weren't leading churches. Nope. They weren't on a platform. And think about this just for a second, because I thought, I wonder if Timothy just woke up one day saved or woke up one day full of faith. I don't think that happened. Nope. I think he saw it, he heard it, and he lived around it. He watched faith walked out in ordinary moments. He saw prayers prayed. Think about this in your mind's eye. The ordinary days you spent with your kids or your family or your coworkers. The way you prayed and the way you spoke truth or the way you heard truth. He probably witnessed consistency. He experienced women who kept planting seeds of faith over and over. And guess what? They didn't know what that future would look like, but they kept planting. So what I want to say for our point under here, influence beyond the house. Empty nesters often influence generations they never see. Your influence while it affects your children, it will influence generations to come. Oh, I want to do that. One day when my grandkids say, Grandma Shelley, I don't think I want to be called Grandma, but I don't know, Gigi Shelley, whatever cool name they want to call me, I'll let them decide. But this is so encouraging. When I look at it like this, I remember listening to a young mom at the conference, and what she said just was so powerful. She has 3 small kids, and she said her influence was to train her children in the way of the Lord to be influencers for the kingdom. That's what it's about. Every season, every generation, every age. Because Matthew 28:19 says, Go therefore, make disciples of all nations. Now listen, there is no retirement and there's no age limit on that commission. That's right. We don't retire out of influencing for the kingdom. We keep on going. It just may look a little different. So the next woman I want to talk about, we don't hear about her a lot, but we sure hear about her son. He is very famous. This one is the courage to release control. How many of you are there and you just, oh man, my kids are, they're 10 and I don't want to let them go to whatever school, or I need to release control of my high schooler that's going off to college and not hover and let them be, or my adult that's moving out and I don't want to be, say too much. That's got to be hard. And it's hard for me to release that control. So Exodus 2:1-10, I'm sure you'll remember the story. It's the story of Jochebed. I'm not going to tell you whose mom she is yet because maybe you know, but maybe you don't, but you're going to find out in just a second. A new Pharaoh became afraid that the Israelites were becoming too numerous and might one day rise up against Egypt. So out of fear, he enslaved them and gave them a cruel order that every Hebrew baby boy would be killed. You know who it is now? That's right. It's Moses. So Moses' mother, Jochebed, hid him for 3 months. Could you imagine 3 months hiding your child? So when she could no longer keep him hidden, she made a basket, coated it so that it would float, and placed him in the Nile River. Well, as you know, Moses' sister Miriam watched as that boat floated away. Could you imagine your brothers in a boat floating away on the Nile? You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I'm wondering, like they probably had alligators and snakes and stuff, and there's this little baby in this basket. But so empty, as we say, nesting, those seasons, is a moment like when you're preparing your kids, you're protecting them, you're praying, and then all of a sudden you have to release them, no matter the age. Young nexters, let me tell you, releasing those kids at 5, 7, 10, 15 to drive or their first job, it's not easy. We have to know that we've prayed and we've trusted and we've influenced them enough to where we can release them and trust God. And once you do that, you don't know what's going to happen. I wonder if Jochebed knew one day Moses, what he would do. So I looked up the name Moses, and it means drawn out. And he literally drew the Israelites out of Egypt. He had influence. His mother was able to nurse him and bring him back into her home. Her courage wasn't in holding on. It was in trusting God with what she loved the most to release. So my point here would be courageous influencers. That often means you've got to let adult children make their own choices. You've got to pray instead of fix, and you've got to trust God instead of managing. Sometimes you feel like you got to manage it all and fix it all. You don't have to. Release it to God and go to bed. You remember what we talked about? Whatever age your kids are or whatever season you're in, this might be it might not be about kids. Maybe you need to release the dream or the idea you had of this thing happened in this way and God had other plans. I just think that's so amazing. So my next one is we have to have courageous influence in a new season. In Titus 2:3-5, it says, older women likewise be reverent and teach what is good. I'm an older woman. But remember, whatever age woman you are, you're older than someone. That's right. There's younger people around you. So teach what is good. And listen, maybe influence looks different. It doesn't mean you're making lunches all the time, driving kids everywhere, showing up at school events, or helping out with homework, which I got to be honest, I'm not sad about that. The homework season was rough. Or being there for everyone all day long. Dad had his role, but mom was kind of like the one that kept the schedules and knew what was going on with the medicine and the doctor's appointments and all the things. Then all of a sudden that stops. That is a hard season to get a hold of. But just because the hands-on roles have changed doesn't mean our calling disappears. Empty nexters, this may actually be what we are called to do. Because hear me clearly, we now carry something we didn't have years ago. 30 somethings, 40 somethings, you carry things you didn't have 20 years ago or 15 years ago. You carry experience, you carry perspective, and you carry stories of God's faithfulness. You carry lessons that came through victories, disappointments, those waiting seasons, prayers that were answered, and prayers that weren't answered the way we thought. Oh man, I love the times that I get to sit down with my kids and say, let me tell you about the faithfulness of God. When my kids are, maybe really, they might be struggling for, financial blessing or financial need. I said, let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you how God showed up. But that was a time when we had to really trust God that He had us. And it's a new season of influence. And maybe the previous season that you were in, it's not in those four walls anymore. Maybe it's without. It's outside the four walls. Courageous influence can be expanded outward. And we've talked about this in the past. You invest in your community. You mentor young women. Lead with experience and encourage someone walking behind you. And we get to serve from a place of overflow rather than obligation. What a great season. Because influence isn't always standing on a stage, as we know. It's those coffee times, those text messages, and phone calls. I encourage you, pick up the phone, have a one-on-one conversation, hear the voice on the other end, because you know good and well a text can hide emotion. Sometimes you need to hear, on the other hand, that sister whose voice might have changed. Maybe they were great when they answered the phone, but then all of a sudden the tone changed. And you're on the other end and you can say, I need to pray for you. That's influence. And the supporting verse for this one is, she opens her mouth with wisdom and loving instruction is on her tongue. So what I want you to do this week about this one, pray and ask God to show you. Reach out. Share one lesson God has shown you and look around because your ministry field, it may be somewhere new or it may be right there where you are. Oh, I just love that. And the last point I want to make, which is kind of where I'm living, is we need to have courage to reach the lost in this season, whatever season you're in. Here's the question I've been asking myself, and I'd ask you the same. Have I grown more cautious in my faith or more bold? Sometimes I want to say I'm pretty cautious. But it's easy in this life, in this season, as a Christian, to surround ourselves with Christian friends, Christian routines, and Christian circles. There's nothing wrong with that. But Jesus didn't call us to stay comfortable. He says in Luke 19:10, we're reminded, the Son of Man came to save and seek after the lost. Seek means to go find. When you say hide and seek, you didn't just sit there. You went and found that child that you were looking for. So if that was his mission, it needs to be ours as well. And the season we're in, now maybe, sometimes not as much when the kids are little and you're just running all the time, but I know God will make a way for you to influence the lost in that season. But in the empty nexter season, we have a little more time. I have to throw it in. I have a lot more time because I recently retired. What? I don't know if anybody heard that. I don't think anybody's heard it because I've kept it quiet. Not at all. Hallelujah, a new day. I'm grateful. I had to change that quick rabbit there. You have more flexibility and you have more opportunity to notice the hurting. But I have to shift my mindset. Maybe you do as well. Instead of, oh, my influence is smaller or I've already done my part, what if I said, Lord, who are you sending me to now? Because we know in Isaiah 6:8, it says, Lord, here am I, send me. So what are the barriers that are trying to silence us? If we are honest, it's not that we don't care about the lost. We do. But sometimes we're afraid of being rejected. Romans 1:16 says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel because it's the power of God unto salvation. Comfort. Oh boy, that's a big one. Midlife can quietly become comfortable. We build safe circles and routines, and we just don't want to be stretched anymore. But as Acts says in 1:8, you will receive power and the Holy Spirit comes upon you to be my witness. He will give us the power we need, but we got to get up off the chair. We got to get out of the house. This is a big one for us. We feel irrelevant in the changing culture because culture moves so fast and it honestly speaks a different language. My kids have to always remind me what is okay to say and what's not okay to say, because some of the stuff back in the 80s and 90s, really you shouldn't say anymore. I don't know that. I don't keep up with all that. But sometimes we wonder, do I even know how to connect anymore? Like I'm 59. How do I connect with a 29-year-old? But God will give you the words to speak. All you have to do is open your mouth. I feel like relevance doesn't come from a trend awareness. It comes from spirit awareness. In Ecclesiastes 3:1, whoops, really stumbling over my words, excuse me. It reminds us that the next generation doesn't need people who have all the answers. Oh, that freed me up when I read that. They need people who have walked with God and are willing to share what they've learned along the way. That is why we're here. That is the reason for Empty Nexters, is that we as a community have walked with God and we want to share what we've learned. So here's a few reflection questions as I close. A personal reflection question would be, where have I become quietly comfortable in my faith? What fear most often keeps me from speaking about Jesus? And then a generational influence question would be, what kind of faith am I modeling to the next generation? Courageous or cautious? If a younger woman watched my life closely, would she see evangelistic boldness? Oh, Father, I pray we do that. And guys, I'm not saying we got to be perfect, because we won't be. So I want to pray to close today. And I simply wrote this down for my life, and maybe it'll encourage yours. Father, forgive me for the moments when I've grown comfortable. Forgive me for shrinking back when you call me to go forward. Help us believe the truth that we are influential and our best years are not behind us. Give us the courage to speak, the courage to invite, and the courage to mentor. Send us out, Lord, into the coffee shops, the neighborhoods. Send us into conversations, and send us into the lives of the next generation. In Jesus' name, amen. Oh, Nexters, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast with all my blunders. I feel like I blundered a little bit more than usual, but you know what? I know you love me. And I figure, hey, this is real. This is me, encouraging you to go out and influence people for the kingdom. Have a great one.